Hades 2 is finally out of early access, and while we have a sequel that is bigger and bolder compared to the first, it's also a bit messier, and leaves me a bit mixed with how much our underworld dungeon crawling has become. In Hades 2, we play as the princess of the underworld, whose name I cannot pronounce because of my stupid tongue. But when the Titan of Time invades and captures everyone, it's going to be up to us to once again save the day through the power of rogueliting. The basic foundation of Hades remains the same. Each run, you'll explore randomly chosen rooms, complete with different rewards, get to the end of the biome, fight the boss, move on to the next. And the God Boons make their return as your primary way of changing how you'll play over the course of the run. You'll start out each run choosing from which infernal arms you want to use. That's going to be your base weapon. Each weapon has a standard and a special attack, and you have a default cast ability that can also be modified by certain boons. A new addition comes in the form of magic that can be used to channel and activate Omega versions of each one of your attacks, and these Omega versions can also be modified by boons, items, and so on. Once you get through, win or lose, you'll return to the Crossroads, which act as Hades 2's version of our meta progression and your kind of home away from home. You'll talk with all the characters, and once again, the writing and voice acting are on point. There is just so many permutations and lines based on what's happening during a run, what items you have, which items you had last time. I can't even begin to imagine how long it took them to write and come up with everything here. And the meta progression is going to be, of course, the major point about Hades 2. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that in the coming minutes. While combat remains the same, there are a few notable changes that you'll need to keep track of. Your ability to double dash, which was an essential part of dodging enemy attacks, is gone. You only have a single dash, and after a dash, your character will kind of break out into a sprint or rush as a way of moving a little bit faster. But your dash still remains as your sole or your main form of an iframe. And that's going to be very important, as all the enemies have been given some major upgrades, and you'll be seeing that later on in this video, with the different aspects of your meta progression. The game has definitely gone through a lot more in terms of kind of embellishing out your upgrades. In the first one, you had access to the mirror, and by upgrading in the mirror, you'll be able to raise your stats in permanent areas, getting those very important double and even a triple dash and more. This has been replaced with an Arcana system, that as you unlock the different cards, this becomes your build. Cards come with different costs to them, and there's also bonuses for activating certain cards or getting specific combinations to activate free zero-cost cards. And of course, it's going to determine what you have access to over the course of a run, or kind of your base stats. You can upgrade these cards further, and upgrades seem to be the name of the game here, as there are just so many more things for you to go after. Back in the Crossroads, you can also activate different spells or incantations that will do just about everything. They will give you new quality of life features, unlock new content, new systems. They'll even unlock things to make things even harder, as this game's version of the Pack of Punishment will be unlocked once you get far enough in, which is we replace heat with fear, which seems pretty much on point with how much things are going to get far more challenging for you. And the developers really, I think, decided to push the difficulty and the kind of challenge of the game far further. In a way, it reminds me of kind of going from Hollow Knight to Silksong, in that Silksong expected you right from the start to already be versed in the mechanics of the game, and Hades 2 feels very similar to that. The difficulty gets far higher faster in this one compared to Hades 1. And while in the first game you could generally see yourself winning very early on, you're going to be working a lot harder here. With the increased aggression of enemies, and especially the increased variety of enemy attack patterns coming into play. At this point, I'm going to be switching footage to some of my more current runs, so I guess we're going to have like a minor spoiler. We won't be talking anything story related here, but just as a point for everyone watching. One of the biggest aspects of the difficulty of Hades 2 compared to the first is definitely when it comes to enemy aggressiveness. I was watching footage of myself doing a Heat 36 run in the first game, just to see if I was imagining things in terms of how much harder I found Hades 2. And as I was watching the footage, a few things were kind of like standing out to me. Hades 2 features far larger rooms, and that means that the camera is generally going to be more zoomed out more compared to the first one. And it makes it a little bit harder to spot some of the enemy tells. And enemy tells, I feel, are one of the weakest aspects of the combat system. You will have some enemies who will get the kind of standard flash point before they attack. Some enemies, I could not even see their tell coming, but that could also be by the fact that the screen is just filled with far more graphical effects, especially from your own attacks. Part of the better aspects of the boon system is how different boons can kind of combine or synergize with each other. The ability to get duo versions of boons, where if you have enough boons from two specific gods, they'll combine into one, returns, along with some new gods joining the party, which brings their own abilities, their own special buffs and debuffs, and more. And all in all, I would say that the boon system has been improved here, and I think it's been improved as a way to try and compensate for the greater challenge. Enemies are faster, the perks they can get, especially if you're playing with the respective fear mode, have certainly been improved, and you're just going to find them being far more active and far more dangerous to fight, especially the guardians and the bosses. While you'll eventually, if you're good enough, will learn the basic patterns for each one of the boss fights. When you turn on the kind of like rivals modifier, aka the enhanced version of each boss, prepare for a whole new level of pain as you try to learn these patterns, and the game gets very close to bullet hell or bullet Hades at that point. And a lot of this comes with the kind of slower progression. When you start out, you are very much going to be behind the 8-ball. Your health is going to be very low, you don't really have access to a lot of pure damage upgrades. And some of the most important upgrades to focus on in terms of meta progression include upgrading the Arcana cards that grant you more damage. One of my favorite cards is the one that grants you more damage if an enemy is under the effects of 2 or more god curses. And being able to upgrade the Infernal Arms. Now that comes relatively into the mid-game of Hades 2, but once that system becomes available, with its own way of acquiring resources, then you're going to be really off to the races in terms of upgrading your ability to just add more damage. One of the aspects I really enjoyed is when the knife weapon got the ability to parry enemy attacks. At that point, basically the Doom music started to kick in for me, and I just started to destroy everything around. But everything feels slower and more stretched out. With more gods and more characters to talk to and friend, means you're going to be spending more time gathering the resources for the friendly cutscenes and raising their relationship meters. More characters also means that you'll have access to more resources and more things you're going to be juggling over the course of a run. A brand new feature is being able to gain favors from the Moon Goddess, who she will give you access to kind of your special attack or special ability that you'll be able to gain access to during a run and can be upgraded by going to those specific rooms. And you're going to find there's just a lot more to do here, both during a run with deciding which upgrade to go for, and then after a run with all the different incantations you're going to be having to unlock and get access to. And it feels, as I said a few minutes ago, that Hades 2 was really designed for someone who not only enjoyed the first game, but they beat it. And I mean like true ending, or at least good ending, Hades 1. And you're going to find that there's a lot more additional content beyond just the initial run here compared to the first. There are new bonus challenges that you'll have to complete specific areas under specific conditions. The Heat/Fear challenges make their return, complete with some lovely statues for you to unveil if you can do it. And one of the things I will say that I enjoyed about Hades 2 is a far more involved Act 2. In the first Hades, when you beat the game or you started beat a game enough times, we kind of entered the second act of trying to move the story along and at least get to an ending. In Hades 2, Act 2 comes with it a brand new run, complete with new characters to meet, new bosses and enemies to fight, and even more challenges and resources for you to go after. And I really did enjoy how much they evolved that part of things. But it definitely feels more frustrating to play. Because you're limited to one dodge, it means that due to the aggressiveness and just more variety of enemy patterns here, it's a lot harder to defend yourself compared to the first. There's so many heat-seeking projectiles in this game, as well as cascading projectiles, where it hits a wall or hits the ground, it explodes into another pattern. Or the enemy will perform an attack that just causes a massive shockwave or multiple shockwaves, so you all have to figure out where you're trying to avoid them. And as I said earlier regarding the attack tells, something that happened way too often for my liking is that an enemy will do an attack off screen, and it will kind of speed on the screen so fast, or I'm focusing on something else that I can't see it in time to get hit, or a melee enemy will start their attack as they're off camera, and as I'm running forward to try and find them, they'll do the attack just as the camera kind of gets them into frame, and it's too late to react, and I get hit. In terms of advanced play, the cast option, one of the Arcana cards, allows you to turn on and become temporary impervious, aka get an additional iframe at the split second of being used, but because your cast is going to be tied to your damage, more often than not you're going to have to rely on your ability to dodge, roll, or dash away. Now you do get options to add passive benefits like dash, and there's certain boons that you can get that grant you one or multiple temporary free hits during an encounter. And there's definitely a lot more going on here compared to the first, I think for good and for bad. With the variety of boons, the different aspects, different upgrades, you're not, I think, as tethered to specific builds compared to the first. There are some options that are just amazing. Getting Demeter's freeze ability is just wonderful at just being able to stop an enemy, even those with armor or additional buffs, from being able to do anything to you. And the different heirlooms make their return as well, allowing you to swap them between each biome, and I'm sure people will be figuring out which best pattern or which order they're going to be going through. But with the nature of the difficulty here, it means that I feel like runs are more polarized compared to the first game. The footage that I should be showing now, as I said, is going to be two of my most current runs where I was just dominating things. And this was one of those cases where everything was kind of working perfectly. All the pieces were fitting, the build was solid, and I was just destroying everything. But you can also have runs where it's just not working. Maybe you chose the wrong aspect, maybe you're getting the wrong enemy perks, or you're just not getting upgrades. And it can just feel horrible to play. And there were a few times that I just cursed out loud the game and just turned off the run, because I just couldn't handle how annoying it was to play at that point. And that is the first time in a long time that a roguelike or a roguelite has done that to me. And much like with the first game, if the build is not coming together by the end of the first or even the end of the second area, you're going to be in for a very rough time. Now eventually, due to the meta progression, you should gain the means of circumventing that, either by just raising your base power due to upgrading your aspects, or unlocking enough meta progression to get re-rolls or more guaranteed ways of gaining power. But it still feels far more slower in this one, due to the sheer number of resources and the variety of incantations that you're going to be trying to get. And on top of that, you of course have the fate list / bonus objectives for you to achieve. To begin to wrap things up for this review, Hades 2, as I said in the Stinger, is certainly bigger and bolder compared to the first one, but it doesn't feel as refined compared to it. If you enjoyed the first Hades predominantly for the really great story and how it intertwined roguelike mechanics and progression into a very heartfelt story, Hades 2's story feels a little bit lacking in that respect. Part of it is by just the far higher stakes as to what's going on. And you kind of lose the playfulness between the different characters and what is happening in each kind of environment or each kind of situation. The story is still interesting. As I said, the writing is fantastic, but it does feel like, again, this was designed around people who beat Hades 1 and they want more out of it. And I'm curious to see, like, when everything is settled, if the churn rates are going to be consistent or different between Hades 1 to Hades 2. I ultimately end up kind of like in the middle between these two. While I do enjoy some of the mechanical improvements, such as the changes with the boons, the weapon variety, and all that, the defensive side still feels a bit lacking. Removing that double dash makes it very hard to sometimes get in at some of the bosses. And due to everything that's going on, it's very hard to tell or spot specific enemy tells. And oftentimes you'll be able to notice it just before it's too late to react to it, as with some of the later fights. And a lot of that, it will eventually come down to you just learning the very subtle animation tells, or even the very subtle barks to let you know what attack they're going to be doing. But it's going to take a lot of playing, a lot of success, and even more failure to get there. All in all, if you loved Hades 1 for the gameplay, you are one of those fellow sickos who did a Heat 36 or more run in it, then I think you're going to really end up loving Hades 2. But if you only enjoy the first game for the story, or you enjoy just keeping it on God mode, which returns here, you don't get the kind of start of the Pact of Punishment option that was in the first game, but again, this one starts out far harder. And if you're not into like kind of more and more challenge or more escalation, then I don't think the story here is going to be as inviting or as interesting for you to go through all the many runs to get to it. With that, Hades 2 was played with a retail key. If you're into your game doesn't involve roguelikes, Souls, Hades, or more, be sure to get in touch. As I said, if you did play both games, I'm curious what you ended up thinking about, and if you did decide to push up the Heat/Fear side of things. And with that, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see everyone for some more video games and game design talks coming real soon. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.